In the initial load technique, you will export the data using SQL Server native export import methodology. First, let's clean up the records that we created previously. Let's go ahead and stop the processes. Okay, we stopped all the processes. Let's go other side, target. Okay, let's stop it. Now let's go ahead and clean up the records. We deleted the records on target server node 2. Now how about this? Is it still running? Okay, good. How many records we have in this? Around 4313 rows. Okay, now we already added the tran data, so we don't need to add the tran data again for the tables. Now we need to start capturing the transactions. Okay, these two are the extracts for employee and department. Now the extract started capturing for employee and department. Let's use the export data task. Okay, select the source server and the source database. In the destination, enter the destination server, select the target database, select the tables that you wanted to export. We have cleaned up the record, so we don't need to say delete the rows in destination table. So enable the identity, because the target table has identity columns. That's it, finish. It's going to copy the rows. This department 2 rows and employee 4377 rows. In the source we have 4378 and in the target 4377. Okay, now the extract has data prior exporting the records. Okay, probably it might be having some overlapping of data, so we need to have a handle collisions parameter in the replicate file. Okay, so let's go ahead and we uncommented handle collision parameter and we commented out the batch SQL. Okay, let's start the replicate process. So now the replicate is going to sync the data okay 4399 4401 here 4402. Okay, so basically the records are matching. Okay, it's the data is synced up, so the replicate caught up with the transactions. Now you can go ahead and remove the handle collisions parameter. This is how you work with export import methodology. So you can use backup and restore or initial load, GoldenGate initial load method, or export import of tables using SSIS. So you can use any one of the methodologies to transfer the existing data from source to target, and after that set up the change replication with handle collision sometimes. Now we will take a look at parameters. So far we have not discussed about the parameters in the extract file or replicate file or in the pump parameters. So let's take a look at those parameters in detail to see what they are. This is the parameter file for the extract GGEC01G1. This extract is capturing the transactions for the table EMP. You can list as many tables you want. You can say dbo.star. If you say dbo.star, then it's going to capture for all the tables which has the schema dbo in that database. It will avoid the tables that starts with sys, and also it will not capture the tables that starts with ms. So GoldenGate thinks that the tables that starts with ms are Microsoft system tables, or even sys. The tables that start with sys, GoldenGate thinks that those might be system tables, Microsoft internal tables. Okay, so it won't capture the information for that. So you may have to explicitly add them. You may have to check for those tables to see if the transactions for those tables are being captured. For example, if you have created any table that starts with SYS, you have to be very careful. Even while adding the tran data, you can say add tran data dbo.star. So in that case, it might not add tran data for tables that starts with ms or sys. So you have to carefully go through the output when you issue add tran data. So you have to carefully go through the output to see what tables it added, what tables it has not added. If you have created a table, then explicitly specify that table. Okay, even add tran data are in the extract parameter file. Let's go through the parameters in detail from top to bottom. GoldenGate, it parses the parameters from top to bottom. You might have one parameter here, and you can have other parameter here. So this will take into effect. So it parses the parameters from top to bottom. It reads from top to bottom. Okay, first this is the parameter, extract parameter, which says this is extract file, extract parameter file. The extract name GGEC01G1. It should be 8 characters. So whatever the naming convention, whatever the logic, whatever you do with 8 characters. Some people think, okay, the application name 2 characters, production for P, test for T, development for D, and department or some numbers. You can have you can have some naming shortcut naming conventions to make this name more sense. There might be many extracts. So how do you identify? Is it accounting extract, or IT extract, or production extract, or development extract, or extract for which table, things like that. So if you are working on several extracts, so you will obviously come to know how to best give the naming conventions. Okay, so this is how you specify the extract name. 2 hyphens, that means the line is commented out. If you put 2 hyphens before the line, that line is ignored by the GoldenGate. It will not parse that. Source DB GGESN. So this is how extract connects to the source database. In the replicate, you will specify target DB because that's a target database for the replicate parameter file. But this is extract parameter file. Here you have to say source DB and the DSN name. We have created the ODBC DSN, system DSN. You have to give that name here. And user ID password. DSN that we have created, it has credentials. Okay. When I created DSN, I used my Windows authentication. So if somebody uses this DSN, then it will use their authentication. So that's what I have specified in this DSN. But you can say I wanted to use this DSN but override the user ID password here. Whatever the user ID password you specify here, it will override the login information here. But the database name, server name, everything else you use from the DSN except the user ID password. So this user ID password should be having the database owner access. When you add TRAN data, you need to have sysadmin access because it enables the CDC. It enables several other configuration options for the server or database. It needs a SA level permission when you add TRAN data. Once you added TRAN data, then this login information, then this login details, it is just enough to have DB owner permissions on the database. This login information doesn't need to have SA level permissions, but whereas whoever adds the TRAN data, they need to have SA level permission. Okay, we specified extract name, we specified what is the database that we are going to connect and work with, and format SQL. The extract captures the transactions from the source database and creates a trail file. It creates a trail file in the canonical format. That means the format that extract can understand. It's a mission code kind of format. You won't be able to understand. Let me open one of the extract trail files to see what the heck I'm talking about. This is the trail file. This is what is called as canonical format that GoldenGate says. But still you can see some data here, my last name, my first name, stuff like that. But the numeric characters, really it's some kind of junk. Okay, so basically you cannot read it. But this is how GoldenGate stores the records, transactions into the trail files. These records will be transmitted to the target. But sometimes you wanted to see the SQL, the record in SQL format. Why? You might be having your own reason. For example, you might want to see what kind of SQL statements that GoldenGate captures or generates. Because when this trail record goes to the replicate frames a SQL statement, creates a SQL statement and execute against the target database. You wanted to know what is the exact SQL statement. There might be some problems with the SQL statement. Okay, sometimes statistics could be out of date, or there might not be index on the predicates. So there could be several reasons why you wanted to look into the SQL that GoldenGate is coming up with. So in that scenario, you might want to use format SQL in the parameter file. If you specify format SQL, that means you just uncomment it. Okay, if you specify like this, then the trail file output will be plain SQL statements. But replicate cannot understand the SQL statements. Replicate understand the trail file in canonical format. But you can view the extract output in a plain SQL statements. That's what this format SQL stands for. Okay, discard file. If the extract appends are stopped for some reason, so definitely it has some problem with the input. So it will write that record, whatever the record that it's working with. So for whatever reason that it would not able to proceed further, that record, that information will be stored in discard file. Okay, if you don't specify discard file, so then you won't be having much information to debug or analyze. You need to specify the discard file. Okay, I mean, it's recommended. It's not that you should, it's recommended. So you can say where the discard file is located, and you can have a couple of options here: append, purge, those kind of options. Append means whenever the extract appends, it will append the records to the existing file. If you say purge, then every time it's going to reuse the same file, overwrite the content. Okay, so if you append, then your discard file will be huge after some time. You need to roll over the discard file. Okay, since I said purge, I don't need to specify discard rollover options. Next is tran log options. This is very important parameter in the extract file. This is not applicable to the replicate parameter file. There are some parameters which are applicable to the extract file. There are some which are applicable to the replicate. There are some which are applicable to the both and the pump. This is applicable to the extract and pump. Okay, a pump is a secondary extract process. So pretty much most of the primary extract options are valid for pump extract. So discard is common. It is applicable to the all processes: extract, replicate and pump. Okay, tran log, this is extract parameter. Okay, this is very important parameter. I said manage secondary truncation point. So what is a secondary truncation point? In fact, I explained a little bit when I said about tran data. In the SQL Server log file, that is active transaction log. SQL Server can have a number of log files. You can say a number of data files and number of log files. The log records will be stored in the active transaction log file. For every log record, there will be LSN, and transaction ID will be there associated with the LSN. So every LSN will have some transaction. Okay, but there are some LSNs which will not have any transaction. For example, updating the statistics, updating the metadata. So for those, there are several things happening in the database. So for most of the 99%, I would say it would be because of the LSN is there because of some transaction. Okay, but there are some LSNs not there for transactions. So when you say manage secondary truncation point, that means GoldenGate manages the secondary truncation point. When you say add tran data, that means it is enabling the supplemental information. It is logging the additional information. If GoldenGate manages the secondary truncation point, then it moves the truncation point in the log file. If it doesn't move, then the log records will not be marked as a distributed. When the log records are distributed, then only log backup can clean it up. Otherwise, log backup cannot clean up the log records. Log backups will clean up the log records that are marked as a distributor when the replication is going on. You need to have secondary truncation point keep moving in the server for whichever databases you are replicating. So you have to let GoldenGate to move the truncation point, or you have to manually move it. Either way, you let GoldenGate do it or you do it. If you are doing it, then you may end up setting up a SQL Server agent job which execute a particular stored procedure that moves the secondary truncation point. Here, 1 second. Okay, so this is the command. You can execute manually from the query analyzer, or you can execute this stored procedure using SQL Server agent job. But when you execute in the management studio, then you need to, after you execute this command, you need to quit that session. You need to come out of the session, close that session. Otherwise, still it's going to log the record. Okay, that's what here I said GoldenGate, let GoldenGate manage the secondary truncation point. But you can also say no manage secondary truncation point. So when do you say that? If replication, native replication is going on. For example, you have native replication going on top of GoldenGate replication, then you need to give control to the native replication. You need to give control to the native replication to manage the secondary truncation point. Even there might be CDC running on the database. You might have native replication running on the database. So there could be several replication mechanisms going on in the database. So you need to be very careful how you manage the secondary truncation point. By mistake, if you mark a log record as distributed, but that record has not been distributed by any of the replication mechanism, that will fail. For example, you have 100 records. You have 100 records, log records, 100 LSNs. Okay, this is first LSN, this is 25th LSN, 50th LSN, like that. Okay, let us say GoldenGate process this record, this LSN. If you let GoldenGate to manage secondary truncation point, then it will mark the records up until 75 rows as a distributed. Okay, but you are still in the native replication. If you have native replication, it could be here. Okay, this is where your native replication, but GoldenGate is here. Okay, your CDC could be somewhere over here. CDC could be processing here. Okay, but if you let GoldenGate to manage, then it might say, okay, these are all distributed, log backup, you can truncate these records. If you, that means GoldenGate will mark these records as distributed. Okay, so but native replication has not been processed yet. It is still stuck at record number 25. So if you run log backup, it will wipe out this. That's a problem. So these two will fail. And if you, then you have to say no manage secondary truncation point. Since you said manage secondary truncation point, you remember you deleted the capture job in the SQL Server agent. CDC creates two jobs, database underscore capture, database name underscore clean. There are two jobs initially it created when you add tran data. When you start any extract that has managed secondary truncation point, it deletes the capture job. That means you are breaking the CDC. If you have CDC, then GoldenGate can very well mess up the CDC if you say manage secondary truncation point. It's very bad. You will be literally breaking the CDC here if you say manage secondary truncation point. So thumb rule is, if CDC or native replication is going on for the database that you are going to set up the GoldenGate replication, then say no manage secondary truncation point. Don't let GoldenGate to manage it. It will cause problems. Let the native replication or CDC manage the secondary truncation point. Or you can say, or you can create a job. Okay, you can create a job which can move the secondary truncation point. So first thing is, you should not be saying manage secondary truncation point if you are running native replication or CDC. Okay, that's the bottom line. Now ext trail. So you have to specify ext trail, where the trail file is going to be. That is self-explanatory, because extract will create a trail file. So where is the trail file is going to be, and what is the naming convention. So all you need to say 2 characters, but rest of the 6 characters it will append the 6 characters. Okay, so you can have 99999 6 nines, up to 6 nines it can create the files. Okay, but you have to, after that it will recycle. Check palms, no dynamic resolution we have seen. Basically these two options are to check the syntax of the parameters in the file. No compressor delete, no compressor update. By default the updates and deletes are compressed. That means when you update a row, it will log the primary key, if there is a primary key or unique key or key calls. It will log the key and the changed value. For example, you are changing the name, customer first name from ABC to XYZ, then it will log whatever the columns that are changed and the key value. But you can say no compressed updates. That means it will log every column. So why do you need to log every column? In certain situation you may have to log all the columns, because there might not be a key on the target table. If there is no key, then it needs all columns. It will use all the columns in the table as a key. When you add tran data, it will use the primary key. If there is a primary key, it will use that primary key. Okay, if there is no primary key on the table, then it will use the unique key or unique index. Okay, if there are multiple unique index, then it goes by alphanumeric value. So if there are two indexes, then one index starts with A and another index starts with B, then it picks up the index that starts with J. So that's how it goes. So first preference is primary key, second preference unique key, and third preference is you can specify key calls to specify a key, because the table doesn't have a defined key by primary key or unique key. So you can specify, for example, in the customer table, usually you expect customer ID as a primary key. Unfortunately, it's not there. And there is no unique key, but there is a SSN column. There is no index or unique key defined on the SSN column, but you know that SSN column is going to contain unique value for every legal resident, for example. So you can use SSN. You can say, okay, SSN is a unique column. You can specify key as a SSN in the key calls. Okay, GoldenGate will treat SSN as a key column, so it will log SSN in the trail file. Even the table has primary key or unique key and you specify key column, then the key column will take preference over the existing keys, because you know for sure that the key column will be unique and should be used. Then you specify key column and key column will override the existing primary key. GoldenGate by default logs key columns if there is one. So where you specify key columns? Here you specify key calls. So no dynamic check. Okay, we discussed about this. We discussed about no compress deletes. The use of compress delete. When you add tran data, there are options. There are options in the add tran data command. If you say add tran data table name, then by default primary key or unique key or key columns will be logged and the changed column. Okay, we discussed about the compressed updates. So certain times you might want to log all the columns in the transaction log or in the extract trail file. In that case, you might have to use it. Add tran data has additional options. You can specify columns that you wanted to log in the add tran data command. When you say add tran data table name, it will log the primary key or unique key or key columns, whichever key. Okay, it will log the key information and the changed value. Okay, but if you want to log additional information, you can specify the columns, the list of columns in the add tran data command. But specifying those options is available for Oracle. If you are using Oracle database, you can say add tran data table name column calls, you can specify what are the columns that you wanted to log. But for other databases, SQL Server, or Sybase, maybe other databases, it's not there. Add tran data table name, that's it. You cannot specify calls. So you have to use no compress updates or no compress deletes here to log additional columns. Okay. Ignore deletes, ignore updates. By default, GoldenGate will replicate the DML statements, updates, deletes, and inserts. But you can say, I don't want to capture deletes, because I don't want to capture deletes and apply the deletes on the target. Then you can say ignore delete. That means extract won't capture the deletes. If you specify this parameter in the replicate, then replicate won't apply the delete statements against the target table. No compressed updates and deletes, these are applicable to the extract parameter file, because it doesn't make much sense for the replicate, so it's well understood. But ignore deletes, update, inserts are applicable to both extract and replicate. These are the report options. We haven't discussed about the report. Basically, report contains several information. You need the report. Analyze the data volume or statistics information, or what's going on in the server and what parameters have been substituted. There are plenty of information. Report is the only place where you can see what's going on. So this is the report file. The report file, it says these are the parameters that has been defined, and what is the cache value, cache buffer size that I'm using, and whatever the informational messages it will be logging here. So you will come to know several things from this report file, and you can specify several things in the report file. First statement, statistics options, reset report statistics. It will reset the report statistics. Whenever report runs, it will reset the statistics. And report at 01, that means run the report at 12:01. Okay, midnight. Report rollover again 12:01. Report count every 1 hour rate. Report count means how many records has been processed so far from the time the extract is started. Okay, so every 1 hour it will write a row in the report file. Okay, how many records has been processed. Okay, so the report file it will keep rolling every day, and it generates the report. And statistics options you wanted to write. Okay, so wildcard dynamic, wildcard resolve dynamic. It will resolve the tables dynamically. So when the extract is started, it will not validate the table until it gets a record, until it captures a record for that table. When it captures the record, that time it will validate the table. So until that time, it's not going to browse the metadata of the table, because we don't want extra. For example, here it is simple, one table. Sometimes there could be 50 tables or 100 tables. You don't want extract to be verifying every table when the extract starts up. That would waste some time. So it should dynamically resolve the tables if you specify wildcards. Dynamically resolve it, at the time of capturing the data. Okay, so don't validate metadata or don't browse the metadata during the extract startup. So these are the parameters. Pretty much I might have defined the same parameters for every extract. If there is anything different, I will let you know, but so far I see pretty much same for this is the general parameters list for extract. Let's take a look at initial load. I think we discussed about the initial load doesn't contain much. It has the remote host, so which is node 2, because initial load directly sends the records to the target. In the extract parameter file, you have to specify the target server, the manager it is listening to, and the replicate that it should be working with.